This Notebook LM video explores the paradoxical history of Christianity, from being a persecuted religion to becoming an institution that wielded power and engaged in persecution itself. The trauma of those early centuries left a lasting psychological imprint, shaping what modern psychology calls a persecution complex.
All right, today we're going to dive into one of history's great paradoxes, the story of Christianity. I mean, this is a faith that was literally born from persecution, but would one day wield that exact same power against others. So we're going to unpack how that incredible transformation happened and what its really complex legacy means for all of us today. Okay, let's just start with this. This quote. It just lays out the stark contradiction we're tackling. And, while it seems like it can't possibly be true, both halves of this statement are historically accurate. So the real question is, how? How did a faith that was defined by its martyrs completely transform into an institution that, created its own? So, to get to the bottom of this, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the history, right? Christianity under Roman rule and the huge shift that changed absolutely everything. Then, we'll get into the psychological side of things and wrap it all up by drawing a really crucial distinction for today. So, first things first, we have to acknowledge these two separate but deeply connected historical realities. One is a story of survival against all odds, and the other, it's a story about power and what happens when you get it. All right, let's jump into that first chapter. This all begins with Christianity as this small, often misunderstood sect just trying to find its way inside the massive, powerful Roman Empire. So, why were they persecuted? What's really interesting here is when you look at it from the Roman perspective. This wasn't just random cruelty. A lot of it was driven by political fear. If you refuse to worship the emperor, that's not just a religious choice. In their eyes, it's treason. And on top of that, there were all these wild rumors, like accusations of cannibalism because of misunderstandings about the Eucharist. Plus, unlike Judaism, which Rome saw as an ancient, legally protected tradition, Christianity was new. It was seen as this disruptive, disloyal, and kind of weird superstition. And here's the incredible part. Despite all that opposition, the faith just exploded. It's almost ironic. They used the very roads and trade routes of the Roman Empire, their persecutor, to spread their message. The promise of an afterlife and these really tight-knit, welcoming communities, it was magnetic. It drew in everyone from slaves to the aristocracy, even when it was incredibly dangerous to join. And then, everything changed. In the early 4th century, one Roman emperor makes a decision, and boom, the entire course of Western history pivots, and Christianity's relationship with power is altered forever. This is it. 313 AD. This is the year. This is the exact hinge point on which this entire story turns. Now, it's so important to get this right. The Edict of Milan didn't suddenly make Christianity the official religion of the empire. What it did was arguably even more profound. It moved the faith out of the shadows of illegality and into the light of legal recognition. For the very first time, being a Christian was no longer a crime. I mean, just look at this timeline. The speed of this transformation is just stunning. In 303, Christians are facing the worst persecution in their history. A mere 10 years later, their religion is legal, and then by 380, less than a single lifetime later, it's the official, state-enforced religion. I mean, talk about an unbelievable reversal of fortune. Okay, so what happens next? With the full power of the empire now on its side, the church's role in society was completely turned on its head. And this leads us to that second, much darker half of the quote we started with. And you can see that reversal so clearly right here. The target's just flipped. Before, it was the early Christians. Afterwards, it was anyone who challenged the new, state-backed official belief system. This meant followers of the old Roman gods or pagans, long-established Jewish communities, and even other Christians who were now branded as heretics.
So there it is. That's how you solve the paradox. When you merge church and state, religious doctrine suddenly has the force of law. Protecting the truth isn't just a theological debate anymore. It's a matter of state security. And just like that, disagreement becomes heresy, and heresy becomes a crime. This set the stage for centuries of religious conflict, from suppressing paganism all the way to the Inquisition.
Okay, so that whole dramatic history, it didn't just change the world, it left a deep psychological imprint. So now we're going to pivot from the historical events themselves to a modern psychological concept that can help us understand how that past keeps shaping the present.
So before we go any further, let's be really clear on what this term actually means, from a clinical standpoint. In psychology, this describes an individual's powerful but unfounded belief that they are being targeted. It's a deeply held conviction that just doesn't change, even when there's evidence to the contrary.
Okay, so how does this play out for a whole group of people? This isn't a medical diagnosis, of course, but a really powerful social pattern. It starts with real historical trauma, the memory of the martyrs. That forges a powerful us versus them identity. Over time, this can lead to cognitive biases, where any modern criticism or even a neutral social change gets interpreted through that lens of past trauma, making it feel like a hostile attack. And the final step? Well, this mindset can be used to justify the group's own aggressive actions as just self-defense.
And this is really the key, right? You take that powerful, real memory of suffering from the past, and you start mapping it onto modern situations that are fundamentally different. For a group that was once culturally dominant, losing that privileged position or just facing criticism can feel like an existential threat. So it gets interpreted as persecution, echoing that original trauma.
And this brings us to what might be the most critical point of this whole explainer. We absolutely have to be able to tell the difference between two very, very different realities: genuine, real-world suffering and a psychological narrative of suffering. And this just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have genuine persecution. We're talking about real, verifiable violence, oppression, and legal restrictions. It's an objective reality happening right now. On the other hand, you have a persecution complex narrative. This is a subjective interpretation. It takes things like social change, simple disagreement, or a loss of status and frames them as an attack that's equivalent to historical martyrdom. They are not the same thing.
And let's be absolutely crystal clear on this. Recognizing a persecution complex narrative does not in any way erase or diminish the reality of genuine persecution. Christians in many parts of the world today face severe, life-threatening danger, and confusing a feeling of losing cultural influence with actual violent oppression does a profound disservice to those who are truly suffering. We have to be able to tell the difference.
So we want to leave you with this question to chew on, because this whole dynamic of a group's memory of past trauma shaping how it sees the present, it isn't unique to any one group. It's a fundamental part of the human story, and really understanding it is key to thinking critically about the powerful narratives that shape our entire world.